Every day you see a new headline about AI and you're like, am I like missing the boat on something? Because I can tell you right now in accounting, there's not really all that many like cool accounting applications for AI. The big exception's probably accounts payable, where there's a bunch of AI stuff happening. Otherwise, what most of us are doing is we're using generalist AI tools in accounting, like you're using the chat GPTs and stuff like that. It's not really accounting specific AI tech. Recently, I did a Q&A with the WriteWorks community that I'm going to share with you today. It's interviewed by Joel Hughes, the CEO of WriteWorks, and we talked about just this, like what do we see for near future accounting AI developments, and what should that ultimately have us doing today? Like how do we prepare for that? How do we build it into our firm so it's something that we're perpetually learning? Because like AI is so unique in the way that it keeps changing. So it's kind of hard to build infrastructure and like training materials around. But that's also kind of the most exciting thing about it is how fast it's getting better. So how do we like marry all those things into a strategy we can actually use in our firm? We talked about that as well as kind of some bigger, state of accounting technology and how all that stuff comes together. This was a fun one. This happened, like I mentioned, in the WriteWorks community. They've got some other cool interviews coming up with folks like myself, like Ryan Lozanis, Hector Garcia. I'll put a link to that WriteWorks community down in the show notes, and I hope you enjoy it.
Excellent. Okay, so AI, I don't know if you've heard, but AI is transforming the accounting profession.
Sure.
Obviously, we did some work with you probably even a year ago just on safety, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of education underway. There's a lot more needed. Things are changing
Yes.
rapidly. And I think maybe the first question, and I know you've published some stuff on this, but for this audience, what are you seeing and how should firms right now, here we are, today, be thinking about AI as they plan for their next year?
I mean, the biggest thing, which was the whole point of our collaboration a year ago, the biggest misnomer right now is that there are not completely secure ways to use AI even with confidential client information. Like there are completely secure ways to use it. The sooner we can come to terms with that and do whatever grappling we've got to do to get our heads around that, which may take some homework, may take talking with your IT group, whatever that is, whatever we've got to do to get there, we got to do that work, because there's the biggest blocker to AI adoption right now is just the over analysis. If I just go to that one more webinar, one more conference, one more whatever it is, then I'll have the tools that I need to use AI. Where like learning how to use these tools is fundamentally different than any other tech we've had before. Any other tech, you're rolling out a practice management system or something like that. You get an implementer and they tell you what every single button does. And everybody gets trained and there's a plan, week 1, week 2, week 3. And every time you hit a button, the button does the same thing. And with AI, like that's just not how it works. So like the best way to learn AI is it just being habitual, it being part of your work process. So rather than like a top-down approach to adoption, it looks a lot more bottom-up and creating feedback loops in the firm so everyone's sharing what they're figuring out.
And I think to your point there, I think we're seeing similarly sort of two big blockers. One is just the generic safety issue and like, is it safe yet still? And there are a lot of reasons that people will say it's not. But I think we agree with what you're saying, of course, which is, it is possible today. It's possible the same way we've been protecting client data for whatever, a couple of decades, we can do that with AI. And then I think to your point, the other thing we hear is, but it's changing so quickly that I'm waiting. Like they're getting better all the time. And it's, yeah, but we need to start using the tools of the day. It'll be great to have better tools, next week, next month, next year. But how
Yeah.
you use these tools is fundamentally different. And that's the learning process that you got to do, right, to learn. And it's not going to be the vendor's going to have a training session, right, to your point, and these are the buttons. And I think it's a very different mindset. And it's a little bit, look, I mean, it's been super hard. I'm not where I want to be personally on this, right? My use of AI. We had our Right Now conference in Nashville. I think it was last week, right? And Gary Vee, challenged the audience to use, if you're not going to post on social media twice a day, which nobody was willing to do, basically, he he said, hey, you should be then at least use AI for an hour a day.
Yeah.
Just start using something. Pick a tool for a purpose you need, and just start, because you don't understand if you don't start and you don't try. And I think we've just got to get people going on that, because the people who don't do that, I do think can be sort of left behind. That would be something that, there's not a reason to wait at this point in time. So it's really like, let's kind of get moving. Do you see any specific use cases right now that you've done yourself or you've seen with a firm that can sort of have been eye opening, and therefore can be, the beginning of building momentum within a firm, let's say, for example, somebody who sort of, whatever, automated a workflow or did research 10 times faster, and said, hey, you know what? I had no overtime in busy season because I was using AI, or whatever the anecdote might be.
Yeah. I hesitate to, like, lock it down so much as to, like, project onto the team, use it this way, that way, and that way, because it almost defeats the purpose of the flexibility of the tool, right? Like, my greatest hack is have it open on a monitor all day long. I mean, accountants, we love our battle stations. Like, I mean, that is the difference between alpha accountant and, run-of-the-mill accountant is number of
I mean,
displays.
come on, 4 screens.
Yeah. I mean, but the reality is most of those screens are filled with things that are simply there to distract you. Your email, like Microsoft Teams, Slack, Twitter, for this thing. Like I'm on another monitor right now, Joel. I know I am. Like the best thing that you can do is leave it up because then you're always thinking about it. You're like, oh, maybe I could check this in. Maybe this could be helpful to me. But if I can contradict everything I just said and give you one really cool use case, I think it is making use of your meeting transcripts. The more of these meetings that we capture, which is starting to become commonplace, which is great, these meeting transcripts, like they are the greatest encapsulation of the collective expertise of your firm that exists. In many ways, it is like the sawdust of a professional services firm because these meetings are just happening, right? It doesn't even require any extra work to capture them. These advisory meetings are just happening. And there's so many things that we can do with these transcripts, and large language models are so infinitely better than like the control F search for a little bit of text. Like there's so much more than that from, give me 5 social post ideas from this meeting I just had. Automatically extract from my client meetings things that they said that could be used as client testimonials. How good are we about asking for that? Making you a better advisor. Like, how could I have better landed this point or that point, or find me a framework that is related to this thing that I was trying to explain so I can explain it better next time? Or the junior who is in the summer sitting in a chair in the afternoon, not being especially productive because they just asked their senior a question 15 minutes ago and that timer hasn't reset yet. And they're like, what do I do? Imagine if they had access to like a version of your expertise through all these meeting transcripts. That's the one that I think is just like could have the biggest, most profound impact on professional services.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. We literally was, we had a guy who was traveling for a week. He missed a couple meetings. He showed up today, and I just got all the stuff from him. I'm like, well, where are the transcripts from the meetings that I missed from the team's meetings? And he's got to prepare something to present to us back next week, and it's kind of like that he's using the tools at hand, and I think he'll end up, being a lot better off with those transcripts and using AI to sort of pull this stuff together that he would have been being there himself, taking the notes and trying to use that. Right? There's kind of
Yeah.
no question. Tremendous productivity enhancement. And to your point, I love the idea. You're like, yeah, I hate to. It's like chicken and egg on the specific use cases. Justify your use of AI, save time. There will be those things, but to your point, getting people using it, there will be things that are discovered that weren't obvious, and different people will use it in different ways. So, do you think it's almost like, should an emerging best practice there be something around just sharing, like periodically having the firm or, the juniors or whomever, we've talked about this here, just sharing like what did you use it for? Like what do you find success with? Because I feel like, there's also a potential here where people find something, it's like, oh, I'm really good at this particular use case and I just beat it to death. And
Yep.
then that's how I use AI. And
Yep.
other people are doing something else and something else and something else. And you're sitting probably side by each and you don't even know. But
Yep.
maybe it's how do we share, successes?
We also have to think about what is like the durable strategy that ensures we keep learning and keep finding the new things as we get new models and new capabilities. Like, I think this has risen to the level of importance where not just accounting firms, but any organization, like there has to be a weekly standing meeting where folks are expected to come to the table and say, here's what I did this week. And it may have worked, it may have not worked, but those two things are equally valuable. And until we create a space where we can like manufacture that touch point, especially in distributed work environments where we're not shoulder to shoulder like we used to be, you just don't get that contact learning like you used to. Like I think it's risen to the level of importance where you have to force that touch point, not in like an aggressive way by any means, but just to have more exposure to what other folks are doing.
Yeah, I think that's critical because right, I think that the spectrum of possibilities there is so much wider than to your point. Historically, the tools, hey, how do you use the practice management system? Great, I didn't know that button did that. Thank you. It's sort of like question asked, question answered, move on. But it's going to be ongoing and dynamic, right? So the more of that, the better. So let me obviously you talk a lot about specific applications. I'll say the tech stack, right? The accounting and tax tech stack, evolution, who's good, who's bad. We all do some version of that, right? We have a set of partners. We try to curate things we know work really well on our platform for customers, and we spend a lot of time with those vendors during tax season trying to make things run. It's a lot of what we do. It's a very important part of what we do. How will AI potentially disrupt? I'll call it how we view the tech stack.
Yeah, I mean, there's just about no aspect of that I don't see AI touching or impacting in some way. I'll give you sort of both ends of like the spectrum of the extremes of what I think it'll be capable of and what it will ultimately not be able to do. My hot take that I think will be proven out is I actually think that the next dominant ledger platform will simply be a large language model. We're actually very close right now to any old person being able to rock up to a chat interface, give it a bank statement, give it a import file, have it walk them through anything that it can't classify with a bit of context. And we all know, like, how many of our clients have just these rinky-dink LLCs with a rental property and these kind of like nothing entities that we got to manage the books for that are a pain. And any new ledger tool is going to start there. It'll start at the bottom, something very simplistic. And arguably, you can already get a large language model to do a pretty compelling version of this. And that may be hard to envision. Wow, how could that ever go to do something more complex? And maybe it probably never does go to the extreme. But I would argue that language models today are closer to being a more compelling ledger than like any of these sort of next generation ledgers that I see on the market besides your QuickBooks and your Zeros, which are kind of like the backbone of accounting firms today. So I would say that's like the extreme end of the spectrum of capability and interesting things I see happening. On the other end of the spectrum, we got like, vibe coding and the whole notion that anybody can create software and just in a almost a just in time sense. Like you can see a world where an AI assistant will be like, you're asking me to do this thing. Do you want me to whip up just a quick little app that will handle this better for you? And like you follow that through and you're like, what, geez, isn't just everything just going to be kind of like just in time software development that just manages everything? I think that while that will have some really, really compelling use cases, I don't think that it seems unlikely that it ultimately gets to the level of something that, hundreds of people have refined to say this is the very best version of this thing that you could possibly have. Say a practice management system, right? Like you can imagine an AI assistant spinning up a task manager and a scheduler, all these different kind of bits and bobs of things. But is that really ever going to fully match like a fully fleshed out, dedicated platform? That feels unlikely to me in the same way that, a spreadsheet is not a very good practice management system at the end of the day. And that still offends a lot of accountants, even just to say that. But I think that's a good analogy where a large language model is this unbelievably cool Swiss Army knife in the same way that a spreadsheet is. And it will disrupt some really interesting things that are ultimately helpful for us and save us a pile of time. But I don't see it going as far as being, say, like, an extinction event for traditional software because now anyone can code. Today's episode is brought to you in part by the fine folks at Cloud Accountant Staffing. As you know, my last 4 hires in my accounting firm were in the Philippines. And this was in an 80-year-old accounting firm. And I came into this with all of the ignorance that you would expect. But man, did it work. Like it completely changed how I approached hiring. Cloud Accountant Staffing, the team behind it, is actually an accounting firm. They started doing the same thing, had a ton of success, started doing this for like some of their like friends' firms. And now they're in the business of doing this for folks like you. So they get it. And they understand all the questions you're going to have the first time you get into it. Like, how does this person get a computer? Do they do it on their own computer? Do I send them a computer? The awesome thing about working with somebody like Cloud Accountant Staffing, they've got recommendations for all of this stuff, all of these questions that you haven't even thought of yet. If you're like me, you sat back with these questions and you were blocked on them for years until I talked to an expert. And that would be my recommendation. Hop on a call with them. They'll have answers for all these questions, but you'll at least then be able to make a decision from a much more informed place. The scales will fall from your eyes. Doesn't mean it's going to be for you necessarily, but you're going to learn a bunch more, right? I can tell you it was for me. If I went out and started a firm tomorrow, I'm probably 50-50 offshore versus onshore hiring because I think I need both. But if you're looking for a place to get started, check out the folks at Cloud Accountant Staffing. They're going to be out on the conference circuit just like me this year as well. So you may see them in the wild, but either way, check them out down in the show notes. This episode is sponsored in part by FinDaily. Did you know? Here's some pretty good Jason on Firms lore. Did you know I once founded and sold a SaaS app? I did. True story. It's the app that is the sponsor of this video, this podcast. Where am I right now? The app was FinDaily. Let me tell you all about it because it was my brain baby. So here's the thing. My firm got into doing like cash advisory work and cash reporting for clients where we'd send them these reports every week or every day to kind of show them like that very short-term sort of upcoming cash situation, like everything leading up to the next pay run and all that. So we'd send these emails that were kind of sort of templated, but it was like a manual thing of pulling together all this different information every single time. So I built FinDaily to be almost like a templated email platform where you just pull in variables from accounting apps, from like banking connections, all that. So imagine drafting an email template, but inside of that template, having placeholders for upcoming bills from the accounting file, for the credit card balance, all these different variables, and it pulls those values right before it sends the email. Now, the team now has built it out to do a bunch more stuff like a bit of math to like roll up several figures so that what it presents in the emails is like the total, connecting multiple different accounting files so that all that stuff is piping into like one email summary. Super, super cool. Frankly, I'm still in love with it. Like the whole concept of just this automated email that pulls in live data at send time and then goes out to a bunch of stakeholders. Your client could go to you, but the whole premise is it's like a super connected email template. You could use the same one with all your clients, different ones with different clients. But just think like you got a client with a bunch of entities, how you can roll all that up into an unbelievably good digest to send them every single day, every single week. And the reason I built it, clients will pay really, really good for this. It's a super useful service. Anyways, learn more about FinDaily. Check out the link down in the show notes.
Yeah, I think to me part of the angle or discussion around that too is what is the, and one of the arguments sort of AI kills software is sort of there's no need for a user interface, right? It's not GUI, it's not the
Right.
four screens, right, with the mouse and the click through. It's voice, which I think makes a ton of sense from a natural language standpoint. I think that the understanding capabilities that are like being built like around AI are going to have dramatic impact on the user interface. But to your point, I feel like the work behind that screen is still largely the same. That could be rebuilt potentially in AI. But I wonder, are workflows primarily visual, or is there a way to really with voice and then I'd say probably agentic automation just do the work? I
Yeah.
think that's gonna be really interesting. And I even just the paradigms on, will it be like, hey, let's add a junior called, the bot and see if that
Yeah.
works. Like what's even the structure in which we'll try to do additional work. Super. I don't know. I think it's gonna be just, I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think it's gonna be wild to see what happens.
I think we're so much closer to that tipping point than we realize. To hear Bill Gates say like, "Oh, the future of every software tool is just semantic," and you're talking with it, and it's chat interface. Like you hear that, and you're like, "Yeah, that may be for you," but I have a hard time not imagine not being able to see like fields of transactions. But what brings me back around to that, although I don't think conversational is like the complete solution. What brings me back to that is what is conversational that we use every day and know how to do? Working with other humans. And the notion of an AI agent being able to go off in a more open-ended way, complete a task inside of a platform, to be able to instruct it in an unstructured way, the same way that I would tell the intern to go and do that thing, like that analogy I can kind of get my head around.
Right.
So like working with an AI agent, it's almost more like working with a human than it is a replacement of software in some ways. But it's one of those things where, man, as soon as it gets to the tipping point of like where that's pretty good, I've hired enough interns in my day to know they were great in some ways, not the best in other ways, and they certainly didn't have the memory that a computer can can have when it goes to do the same task twice, for the second time that I taught it. And that opens a whole other can of worms of like, what's the future of staffing look like around AI and stuff like that? But I think we are very close to that.
That does sort of roll me into, yeah, where I was going with this, which is, so what is that? What's the impact, right, on staffing? Clearly, a lot of conversation for the last many years on, lack of staff and people graduating college with the right degrees, and so
Mhm.
outsourcing and offshoring has been a huge driver. You
Yeah.
can see maybe some parallels. Yeah, can AI supplement and or replace such things? That was really more of a, the same model with people somewhere else who cost less money, right? It was like, hey, we got
Mhm.
great people who are super capable in India and the Philippines, so let's put them to work, and that's wonderful. We didn't have enough people to hire here, but I think as we dig into yeah, how AI plays out there, I think it probably does start there, which is, well, can we add virtual remote workers who are, AI
Yeah.
or AI agents? But at some point, it's like, well, where's the whole even education and training that's currently in place does not even matter if the way the work is being done is incredibly completely different. But
Yeah.
what do you think, let's say the next 3 years, AI's impact on the current staffing shortage, and how firms are today solving that with outsourcing and offshoring?
I try to be like real. I try not to be a AI apologist or too over enthusiastic about it. Like, my real take here is outside of accounts payable and AI's impact on accounts payable, I honestly don't see any AI technology inside of the accounting vertical that I'm all that excited about. What I see is really cool general AI technology that is extremely useful to us. And like Spark is a great example of this, where we can get these AI models to do so many different things. But outside of AP, like inside of the accounting space, I mean, there isn't much. And so on the one hand, you're like, is this really going to impact us that much in the near term? On the other hand, I think the big impact to your point is probably these more generalist AI agents that can kind of go out and do our bidding. But if we actually think about what that looks like in practice, and if we bring this back to the analogy of working with other humans, where do we get the most annoyed with other humans when we are asking them to do our bidding? It's when we haven't given them clear expectations. We don't have SOPs. They don't have direction for how to do that thing to your expectation. So the firm today that runs on Rails and has really good SOPs and has documentation, what are the first AI agents going to use to execute things to your direction? It's going to be the same documentation.
Right. That's the context they need. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the way to get ahead in the AI age, it's the same. So then what do you do with the person who was previously doing that? I think I could say, like, across the board, the things that we do will change. It sure seems like on the other side of this, in all likelihood, there will probably still be an abundance of things to do. There's something about the human condition where every tipping point from the industrial revolution and electricity, and 95% of us used to be farmers. Like, there's always another thing to do, it seems. But for all the fear we have about what are we going to do with the poor juniors, who's smoking AI usage right now? Bunch of high schoolers and college kids. Imagine if you were in college right now and somebody gave you chat gpt, you'd be a freaking wizard with that thing, right? So like, they're coming out of school with hundreds of hours of experience going into accounting firms capable of amazing, like, they're capable of amazing things with AI, but most accounting firms are still like, "Oh, no, 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 we can't use that here." Like, that's no, no, we don't have the boundaries for that. We'll probably get there soon. So here we are, like all the old fuddy-duddies that are generally like not super fast to lean into that stuff. It's kind of like the first time you saw a kid using an iPad and they could just like hustle a touch screen, and you're like, goodness sakes, if that ever becomes a valuable life skill, I'm in trouble. In this case, I think AI usage is, but I think we're going to have like the most productive class of accountants that have ever entered the profession. In all likelihood, we'll probably be learning a whole bunch of stuff from them. But one way or another, like, yes, like the things that we're all doing, in all likelihood, at least over the next 5 years, will probably change a lot.
Yeah, I mean, related personal asides, right? So I've got a 25-year-old daughter who's a software engineer. So she's 3 years into her career, and
Yeah.
like, she's worried. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, she's golden. She's got a great job. She's doing what she wants to do. She's like, well, I don't know. Like these 15-year-olds that are all over the coding, co-pilots and now
Dude.
other things. She's like, I got to get upskilled. and she just started
Ugh.
her career. So it's
Joel, don't you wish we were 16 years old right now, though? Like, how cool would that be? I so badly wish I was.
yeah, well, you're closer to it than I am. I'll tell you that.
I will
um,
say, so, amazing quote that I always love to come back to from Paul Graham. Paul Graham's, like, software guy, investor guy. About a year ago, he said he's having a conversation with the head of a very big software company, and he said this was, like, just over a year ago, and so this is only more true now. He said, "Interesting trend they're seeing is that 22-year-old software programmers are as productive as 28-year-old software developers because they're more comfortable with the AI tools." Like, we've got a generation of folks where they're more savvy with that stuff. Like, to which I'd say, don't you want that for your 22-year-old accountants? Like, like, we're very worried about the next generation, but I think they're gonna have this capability that we just don't have.
Yeah, yeah, superpower. I think, and that begs some questions around, well, compensation, and historically, it's right,
Yeah.
seniority,
Yep.
you get smarter, the whole pyramid, and I think the pyramid, may change into whatever it's going to be, an inverted pyramid or a diamond or something else, but we'll see where that takes us. So, a lot going on in AI. Let's leave that aside for a second. I got one follow up question on AI. So, obviously, you're doing a lot of creation of awesome content. I'm assuming you're leaning on AI. Any super cool story you have for us on how you've used AI? I feel like one of my questions for you is, you do all your voices. Have you been able to like train AI with multiple voices now so they can create new videos for you even with your different characters?
I would honestly, Joel, I would say the most interesting thing about me and AI is all the ways that I don't use it, because I think that's extremely important. Is I still don't let it into my writing at all, into like the authorship, because I just have such a fear of taking the foot off the gas pedal there at all. Like, what I think I've done well in my business now is my voice, not like my actual voice, but is, my take and my opinions on things. And I just think the fact that we are all going to be interfacing with AI so much every single day, from support experiences to a huge volume of inbound videos and stuff like that are AI generated. And you see it on social media all the time. I think the natural reaction to that is a renewed appetite for humanity, right? Like, it's like coming out of COVID when we're all just closed in our homes. Like, we're a bunch of accountants and even we wanted to be outside. So I think this is just the natural reaction to being surrounded by more AI is actually what people really want, which is what I try to do in my content. It's just like, be super real, be willing to be vulnerable, and be very, very slow to remove the humanity from anything.
So this really is you here today. That's what you're telling me.
No, I recorded this weeks ago.
But we're not going to know. I mean, we'll never know because you won't do it until it's so
Yeah.
lifelike. How do
Yeah.
you decide what to publish? So thinking about all the things that a firm owner, staffer, and if I bucketed, technology, business model, soft skills, right, personal work life balance, right. You've talked about things in your own personal journey. Do you have a calendar that you think through, or do you just, do you the content comes out of you, to your point? I mean, obviously one of your keys to success here is experience, but your, authenticity and your vulnerability. So how do you decide what to publish? What are you going to do tomorrow?
It's maybe 50-50 intentional, 50-50 of what am I feeling energized about, which is honestly a tremendous help. Like, the hardest way to do content and feed the beast is relying on, a light from the heavens tomorrow morning and just hoping that it comes, because there's going to be a whole lot of days where it just doesn't. But it's a mix of, there's seasonal trends in accounting firms. So, like, we will always be talking tech change after the April and the October deadlines. Like, that's just the best time to do it. So there's a couple months there where we're always talking about that stuff, because that is the right time. Renewals, we're talking about it now. We're talking about it at the end of the year because that's when it comes up. Otherwise, it is my content is a mix of, like, reacting to the conversation, like what's happening. Intuit sent out an email the other day saying, like, hey, accountants can now refer tax clients to our kind of done for you tax service. And there's some folks who are like, that's cool, and other folks that are like, that's wrong. And so, like, just kind of joining in the conversation there. But also, I mean, I'm in such a unique position, Joel, where I sold my firm back to my partner 2 years ago. And everybody's like, well, aren't you afraid you're going to lose your edge? Like, what are you, you're not one of us now, right? And I'm not. And I think there's a lesson in there. Like, I've accepted ignorance to the day ins and day outs of running an accounting firm. But what I'm able to do instead is literally all I do is talk with other firm owners. If I was still running a firm, I would be heads down in my own little tunnel vision of like, here's my reality and here's all that I can ever see. I wouldn't be able to do what I'm able to do now. And the world, I don't think, needs another accounting firm owner. That's not true. It needs a lot more. But it doesn't need me to be an accounting firm owner when what I can do instead is interact. I mean, like, there's some sort, it's like 4,500 hours a day or something. Blessed people listen to my content at this point. And the more they consume, the more they engage in the conversation,
Right.
be it telling me that I have an irritating voice or, constructive things. And so I get to be in conversation with accounting firm owners all day. And I just feel super fortunate that my job now is kind of just reflecting the best of what I see actually working in other firms, because there's enough thought leaders, honestly, like who just don't have the context and aren't in those conversations. And I just feel super fortunate for like that to kind of be my job now. This episode is brought to you in part by Carbon, the practice management system. I had the opportunity recently to participate in an event that Carbon put together where they brought together a whole bunch of carbon firms. And I'll be honest, I think it was a cool event. But the thing that most blew me away was like the quality of the firms there. And if we can get real on tech selection and how we build our tech stacks in accounting firms, practice management systems. Today, they've never been more similar than they are now. For sure, they're still different. Each one has strengths and weaknesses and all that. We got to understand that when we're picking our practice management system. But you know what goes a really, really long ways for me? When I can look at a whole bunch of firms that I respect and I'm like, could you just tell me what they're using? Man, a lot of them are using Carbon. And I'm increasingly seeing this among firm owners, is if you have friends that run other firms and you're in constant contact with those people, that actually kind of ought to impact how you pick your tech. Because if you have those close relationships where you're like, hey, what do you do with X, Y, and Z? How do you handle this or that? And can get immediate answers from real people that run firms and have worked through these things. That's something that has absolutely nothing to do with the product, but makes that product tremendously more useful. So this ad read, while it has absolutely nothing to do with the Carbon product, which is very good, and they've been in my top recommendations now for several years, but sometimes the ultimate proof is what are the big brands using? And I can tell you, there's a whole lot of very smart, very progressive firms that we should aspire to sort of build ourselves to be similar to. There's a lot of those firms that are running Carbon. Learn more about Carbon. Check out the link down in the show notes. This episode is brought to you in part by, guess who? Wrong, Client Hub. Client Hub is the practice management system that makes every season wow season, not busy season. We're delivering wows, buddy. That's for two reasons. One, because Client Hub provides a game-changing client experience. It's designed with the client in mind first, not like this afterthought bolt-on portal. But second, it's drop-dead simple. Okay, it's not any harder than it needs to be. And one of the really cool things that they've got is magic email. So you actually use Client Hub as your email client. Some things you can do beyond just some niceties they've had, like creating work from emails, being able to pin an email. You can actually even reassign a pinned email to someone else. But in that screen where you're authoring an email, client sends you an email, you get some AI options down at the bottom to generate a yes reply. It will look at the context of the thread and draft a response that's basically yes, a button to draft a no reply, and then an AI composer where I can give it a custom prompt and have it draft that response. Got some other buttons for change in tone, expanding the length of it, shortening it, using AI to try to take the pain out of email, because frankly, email just sucks. So if you're looking for a delightfully simple yet powerful practice management system, take a look at Client Hub. Link down in the show notes.
So thinking about, does the world need another accounting firm owner? A topic that I think is relatively hot is consolidation of firms, M&A, private equity-backed M&A. We talked about this a bunch at our Right Now conference, and I think there's a lot going on, right? So I think that tees up a conversation about whether there's consolidation to what'll be a smaller number of much larger firms with the demographics and the sort of smaller side of the market, whether there'll be people that get rolled up in PE but didn't want that model and spin out and start their own firms, or there's a recycling of people. And I think we're seeing a lot of things happening within our customer base. We're seeing both, right? Buyers, sellers. But I think a couple a couple really foundational questions I'd love your take on. The first one is just like, so let's say private equity, the business model, the style, how they compensate people is fundamentally different than the classic partnership LLC. So
Yeah.
I do think in a lot of markets there's been, let's call it, roll up of companies, but I do think in accounting and tax in particular, given the issues around you need to have CPA ownership for audit and test, that causes some challenges with some of these larger plays. And just how do people, employees at whatever level, partners on down, think about moving from an LLC structure to a different one with a different owner where it's not a partner driven firm. It's a
Yep.
lot of change, right? Independent of, it's structurally changing the capital structure of a business and how people think about their compensation. What are you seeing, and what, if any, hot takes do you have in that area?
Yeah, I think it's a reflection of how killer a business running an accounting firm is. The fact that you can
Totally
cash
agree.
flow the heck out of it, right?
Yes, yes,
So, like, the fact that there's a load of capital in the world that has to go somewhere, and of all the places it could go, a lot of it wants to go to accounting. Great reason to be running an accounting firm.
yep,
I, for one, my like a happy, successful outcome for me, and this is very personal to you, never felt like selling to the machine because we've all seen a lot of versions of that where the people and the clients they got burned. And the devil's in the details because honestly, my thought leadership and what most progressive accounting firms do, like the way they run their firm, it looks a lot like how private equities say people should run their firms. It's not the traditional partnership model or any of that. I have concerns over, the destination, the finish line, like to be peak alpha accountant in the past meant being a partner and having equity and that pie getting smaller. But for all the deals that are being done, and we've seen plenty of deals go sideways and not be a great experience, and who ultimately becomes the beneficiaries of that? It's the smaller firms that are getting all the people and the clients that spin off of that stuff. So I honestly hope at some point somebody figures it out. It's an extremely hard thing to do. I mean, everybody here knows exactly what change management with a whole bunch of accountants looks like. It's not easy, but the other ironic thing I think is that the like approach and the framework and the model that those groups are coming in with, like it actually looks a lot like how more progressive firms are running their firms today.
I completely agree, and I think that at the highest level, it's opportunity. Well, number one, it's more capital, more buyers creates better pricing, and the pricing's
Mhm.
been, in my opinion, or it's been horrific in accounting firms for a long time, and even worse than other professional services. So I think that's changing with the move toward more recurring revenue, which is the way
Yeah.
these things sort of work. The understanding of the recession-proof nature of these businesses. There's a lot to love about. Obviously, the firm model in accounting. And to your point, it doesn't have to be two different things, right? You can run a firm, and the best run firms probably look more like a private equity run business with how they think about clients, how they grow revenue, and how they drive technology driven change management to improve efficiency, right, and client service. So I bet Derek has some good Q&A for us. So let's
That
get to it. We
that's
got 8 minutes left. Sorry,
per
man.
perfect timing. In fact, it's a great opportunity to jump in as Jason was mentioning, some of the smaller firms are being successful right now, perhaps, scooping up in this. So the question that, was posted, one of them, when do we think that we will see an accounting firm that is 100% AI? In other words, you've got potentially even an AI firm owner. You got the bookkeeper, the payroll, etcetera.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I think we're close. So like the version 1 of that is a little bitty baby thing. I can't remember who said this. It might have actually been Paul Graham, but like the quote is something like, "You've already seen the future. You just dismissed it as a toy." So think, what is the itty bittiest little baby version of this you can imagine that can automatically handle the accounting for a company that had 10 transactions in the year? Something like that. We're pretty close to that. A fully productized, just pure software accounting ledger. Like, you see Digits is trying to push the whole automated classification thing as far as possible. That's, I mean, probably in some form or another that already exists. It just isn't exclusively packaged that way. But from that, it grows. I mean, that's kind of been, from the scale factors. I mean, how many past like productized automated accounting firms have come and gone? That's sort of the premise they're all betting on, right? That they can do that. I would say that a version of that already exists today because that's something that large language models can do pretty well on a very small scale.
Second question, also related to AI. as you mentioned earlier, and as we all know, constantly evolving, right? AI is changing what we don't know what's coming tomorrow. How can we write an effective AI policy today if we have no idea what tomorrow's going to bring?
That's a good question. So I think you have to think of it through the lens of the platforms that you're using for AI, be that be that Spark, be that ChatGPT, whatever it is. Those platforms, at least right now, like there's fundamentally an agreement of what information is retained in the models and what information is not. And that is like very concrete and very well understood. Like there is no mysteriousness around that. There's mysteriousness around the ways that we can use and things we can get it to do, but how it retains our data is 100% completely understood. There's not like, I mean, I can, if, this is a Rightworks opinion, and that's the beauty of I can just say whatever I want to say. Like I don't see a world where they come out tomorrow and they ship something, on a business plan where the whole premise of the business plan is security that now, trains on your data or something like that. Like that's a fundamentally problematic thing for everybody who's in the AI business. Like being able to offer a secure AI, there is no greater business opportunity than that. And it's what's created great, like safe spaces for us to go and work with AI. So it for sure needs to be a part of the ongoing conversation, but more around the life cycle of adding a new app or adding some new module or something like that. Because when you sign like the privacy policy of the tool that you're using, the T's and C's, like, yes, let's pay attention to when those change. For example, Zoom, it changed last year, and there was some wording in there where people thought it meant that they could train their AI models on our meetings. And everybody's like, what the heck, man? That's messed up.
Right.
So like we do have to pay attention to those T's and C's. But to me, it's not a reason to not start, if that makes sense.
Joel, did you have any thoughts to add into that?
I think I agree with that. I think that to our earlier point, I think it's the policy, around safety is important, and therefore, and it's exactly what are you using, right? And how is the data being safeguarded? And then the thing you can't really predict, the thing is changing dramatically, is how people are using it, what's working, what's not, and that is left to the reader, right? That's a little more for I'd say the specific firm to say maybe they decide they don't want to use it for certain. You can use it for communications and research, but you can't use it yet for a balance sheet. I don't know, but that's something based on I think personal or whatever in this case firm preference.
And all this stuff is sussed out the more you have these conversations. If we hide from these conversations, you got team members doing the end around. Like it's happening whether we allow it to happen or not. So like just I mean it's like my kids. Like I want you to come to me with this stuff. Like let's have the conversations because I think that's the best way to do it.
I love that. That's a great closing point, Jason, because my wife and I say the same thing to our children. Joel, I'm sure you've said the same. Come to us with these conversations. Just want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Obviously, we will have this. You can go back and listen to it and potentially parse it with AI. I'm not entirely sure what we're going to do with
Yeah.
that yet. Uh, but most importantly, Joel, Jason, thank you guys so much for joining us this afternoon.
How was that? Anything you think I missed or any cool ways that you're using AI that we may not be talking about enough? If there's any ways your firm's putting it to work, pop that stuff down in the comments. Keep the conversation going because frankly, it's an exciting time. As much as I wish there was more like accountant specific AI out there, I'm constantly blown away at just how much value we can still get out of like generalist AI tools inside of our firms. And like these stories are rolling in of like, hey, we finally rolled this out in our firm. We weren't quite sure what to do at the beginning, but like, man, things picked up quickly. You already know I'm a big time AI geek, but I'm very excited to see where all this stuff goes. Like I mentioned, that interview, it was in the Rightworks community. They got some other cool conversations like that planned as well. If you want to check it out, we'll have a link to that down in the show notes. And thanks for coming and hanging. See you in the next one.